in funeral service, you get that wrong person answering the phone or greeting somebody at the door or doesn't have a good bedside manner, at a removal or something like that. They're the director of first impressions, right? That's your business. That's the face of your business because you can't be there all the time anymore. In the early days, it was me. I answered the door, answered the phone. I went out on death calls, but I don't do that for everyone anymore. Yes, it's harder to maintain that. But at the same time, it's important that you do, or you're going to see your numbers start to go backwards because people are going to say, hey, I'm not treated well there. And people talk. This is a small net industry. And if families aren't talking bad about you, your competition probably is anyways. So, it won't take long.
Welcome to the Direct Cremation Podcast with your host, Tyler Yamasaki. Hi, thank you for joining us on the Direct Cremation Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Yamasaki, CEO of Parting Pro, the #1 online arrangement platform. If you like the content, please give us a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. All right, so today's guest started his death care career in prearranged funeral sales with Service Corporation International. After a decade away from death care, he came back as a funeral director. After some time in a family-owned funeral home and another stint at SCI, he finally made the entrepreneurial jump almost 5 years ago and created an affordable cremation brand on his own. In only a few short years, Grand Rapids Cremation Services has grown to employing a handful of employees, serving thousands of families, all while maintaining a near perfect star rating on social media. I'm pleased to welcome my guest today, Troy Kaltenberg.
Hey, Tyler. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, of course. So before we get into how you built your business from basically scratch in such a short amount of time, I want to get into your background a little. Sure. As far as I can tell, you're not a generational funeral director, correct?
Nope. Nobody in my family works in funeral service. I took one of those tests in high school that say what you should be when you grow up. Mm-hmm. And I scored really high as a funeral director. And the rest is history, I suppose. I worked for a small firm in the town that I grew up in. They were just opening their doors at that time. Mm-hmm. And so I got to see my first embalming and work a couple funerals. I was kind of hooked.
So you started at SCI though, right? Like a while back, kind of on their marketing side?
Correct. My first real job was doing pre-need for SCI. Mm-hmm. Actually did that twice, 2 different times. And that's kind of where I started and then just kind of evolved into more of the at-need side eventually. And but I guess I still have a love for the pre-plan sales part of the business, which I do all that for my company as well. So mm-hmm. I kind of have the best of both worlds, I suppose. I get to do both.
Got it. But you did take like a decade away from death care.
I did.
What did you do when you
so it was kind of that phase in my life, I suppose, where I had young kids. This is a hard job sometimes when you have young kids. Mm-hmm. That was kind of before the whole direct cremation market had come into play. So it was more traditional work, a lot of long hours, low pay. So I left that time and worked for a couple different companies. I worked in manufacturing for a while and actually worked for my dad, who owned a marketing company. Nice. Did that for a couple years as well. So kind of got a background on a couple different things. But ultimately came back to funeral service probably about 12 or 13 years ago.
Yeah, we talked to a lot of owners who own pretty big cremation or just funeral companies. And a lot of times the ones that I talk to do take time away from death care before they come back and start to build like their big company. I don't know. I think it does lend itself to learning different skills and seeing what's out there and using that to attribute to growing your own company.
I agree. When I came back into funeral service, I was introduced to the direct cremation part of our business, which I didn't realize had grown so much and was really even a thing. And it was a friend of mine. We connected on Facebook, and he had started a cremation service locally here in town and asked me if I was interested coming back into the funeral biz. And he said it's as close as you can to be a 9-to-5 funeral service, with the direct market. And I came back. I started doing pre-need with him, and then I worked in the office and eventually became a director and a manager there. and fell in love with that business model. I just think it's kind of where things are going. And that was 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And here we
Yeah.
are today.
So what led you to wanting to take that leap and kind of start your own business? Because I will say that I think, someone as like a funeral director and someone as a business owner, while there are a lot of funeral home owners that are funeral directors, they're not like, I wouldn't say that the crossover of skills is typically that similar.
I agree. I think there's a lot of, especially when it comes to technology in our industry, there's still a lot of room for growth. For me, I fell in love with this kind of business plan, I suppose. I did leave that company and I went to work for SCI and worked as a manager of a physical location of a traditional funeral home. And I learned a lot with SCI. Probably became a lot better funeral director the couple of years that I worked there. SCI was very good to me. I didn't leave on bad terms. They paid me well. They treated me well. And I learned a lot of procedures and things that I probably didn't know about, or I didn't know about at the time. But ultimately I said, you know what? I've always had this burning desire inside to start my own business. And over the years, it's been different things. Interested in restaurants and different things like that. But funeral service, and as I've learned a lot over the last couple of years, I've said, you know what? I think I can do it as good or better than my competition here in town. And so I took a leap of faith a couple of years ago and literally cashed out my 401k and started this, not knowing if it was going to work or not, based on the competition already in place and things like that. I guess the only thing I can say is I wish I would have done it 10 years before, but it's worked out really well.
Yeah, in true entrepreneurial fashion, leveraging your own assets to go for it.
I didn't have the money. I had to take it from somewhere, and that's what I had. And I figured, well, if it's successful, I'll make that money back tenfold, in a couple of years. So,
So the one thing that I would look at, and the one thing that I kind of look at when I, approach a challenge or a problem is, I wouldn't want to go up against someone who I felt was already doing everything better than I could do. Right. So when you decided to start your own brand, what was it about your background that you thought I could really focus on this and become different or differentiate yourself from the competition or even SCI, right? Like who's in your area as well.
Right. No, that's a great question. So I guess I looked at it as, I kind of knew my competition in town. In fact, I'd worked for one of them. Yeah. And there was two big players in town already. And I said, you know what, if I can come in and there's lots of components to it, but if I can be better on the telephone, if I can work harder, offer competitive pricing, have the best employees when they interface with families, all the above, I know I can be better than my competition. And so I kind of took that mindset, and it's amazing how much you can win on the phone just by being nice to people and not quoting a price like you're selling widgets or something like that. Taking the time to ask, what's going on? Has somebody passed away? And that's where we've excelled and what's taken our business to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's a huge place that people overlook oftentimes on these, especially on the cremation brands, is that, you're not getting the face-to-face. So that one interaction that you are going to have is be on the phone, and you need to really nail that.
Right.
And your staff needs to nail that, because that is going to be the make or break piece of your business.
And not to interrupt, but when we joined Parting Pro, I saw an instant. You promised me that there would be certain things that would happen, and your technology did deliver. We saw an increase in earned sales, just the interface with the families online. People love that. They love to online shop. So why is it any different when somebody passes away? It really helped our business continue to grow.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will say though that it does help, and people are, do like that, but they do have to get comfortable, right? The one challenge that you have in death care is that there's a lot more of an emotional attachment to going through that process, right? So to get over the hurdle of, is this okay? It still needs to be overcome, usually by the phone call, by the funeral director, by your staff.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
I think, you got to lead the family to the online.
There's still a human touch to it.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
for sure.
it's just another tool that we have.
Yeah.
So,
Of course. So, let's talk about how you started, because, you took a big financial risk, you kind of entered a market where you were familiar with because you worked in that market before, but how did you grow so quickly? I mean, in under 5 years, it seems like you've gotten to numbers that people, have spent a long time to get to. So how did you grow so quickly?
So we grew faster than what I thought we were going to. So obviously I had like a 5-year marketing plan that was way less than what we currently do. I had the first couple months of no calls, saying, hey, I'll have enough money to live off of. But our first call, which was January of 2020, we did 7 calls that month. And I think I had it as a 0 month, our first month. So I'm like, okay. And I think it doubled the second month. And I'm like, I'm actually making some money right off the start, So when I first started, it was really just myself, my wife, and my daughter that worked for us. I started out with a minivan and 1 cot, and we were very basic. I had a laptop computer, and I started marketing through Google Ads. Still to this day, don't really know much about how it works, but I continue to pay for it, and I get calls out of it. So, that started bringing in calls. I did a lot of marketing to hospices and just saying, hey, we're the new guy in town. Give us a chance. That takes years to get that, that trust, I suppose, which we have now. But eventually we had a couple hospice nurses that were referring families to us, and people said, hey, I heard about you and things like that. So it just sort of snowballed. And once again, the whole time, providing top-notch customer service to our families, caring about their loved ones, and just being there every step of the way. And it just continued to grow and grow and grow literally every month for the last almost 5 years. And when I started January of 20, COVID hit March of 20. Yeah. And, our business just took off like that. Busy, very busy. And, I guess I'm fortunate I didn't start a restaurant or something like that during that time. I guess God was there for me that I started the right business at the right time and was able to help people in my community. So I think that really helped right off the bat to get us, where we are today. So
definitely it's nice to start running, or to start off running.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm always impressed with, because as things grow, as you get to scale, as you get to larger numbers, it's always hard to maintain. We always say, like, if we have one customer, we can make that experience for that one customer the greatest experience ever, right? And whether that's, software, whether that's
right,
whatever, right? Because you can spend that time. But in your instance, you're doing, more than, let's just say, 1 a day or something like that, so you have multiple cases that you're working on at any given time. You're more of a volume play, I would say, than a, high touch experience, like, in the grand scheme of things, obviously. Correct. So how do you maintain, because if you go onto your social media, you look at your Google reviews, you look at, Facebook, Yelp, you have 5 stars, 4.9 stars, and hundreds of reviews, right? So that's not something that just happens on accident. How do you maintain that as you start to grow and as you start to get larger and going through those growing pains?
Yeah, it's not easy, because all of a sudden the other duties really start to add up. Being an owner and a manager, paying bills and payroll and everything else that you have to do. I am very fortunate that I think I have some of the best people in the industry working on my staff. I have some people that have some longevity in the industry that have worked elsewhere and come here and provide even better customer service than I can. And I think that's really helped continue that as I add people, making sure they're the right people on staff. Especially in funeral service, you get that wrong person answering the phone or greeting somebody at the door, or doesn't have a good bedside manner, at a removal or something like that. They're the director of first impressions, right? That's your business. That's the face of your business, because you can't be there all the time anymore. And, in the early days, it was me. I answered the door, answered the phone, I went out on death calls, but I don't do that for everyone anymore. Yes, it's harder to maintain that, but at the same time, it's important that you do, or you're going to see your numbers start to go backwards because people
Yep.
are going to say, "Hey, I'm not treated well there," and people talk. This is a small knit industry, and if families aren't talking bad about you, your competition probably is anyways. So it won't take long. So we make sure that every family is, like you said, touched. And that's a phone call. Hey, we're thinking about you. Wanted to talk to you this morning. I have a gal in my office, Abby. She is phenomenal about just reaching out to families and being very sincere with that first phone call. And I think that's helped us.
I see. As we get into kind of the inner workings of your business a little bit, how much of it are you guys doing in-house, and how much do you maybe use as a third party, whether that be removals? I don't know if I know in certain states like certain people can and cannot own crematories. I'm not sure what
Michigan's that way. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is probably the metro area is probably a little over 1 million people, kind of a tri-county area.
Mhm.
And we don't have a lot of like removal services per se in this side of the state. Detroit's kind of a different beast. They've always had removal services. This side of the state really hasn't had a lot of them, but I've recently just started using one kind of when I need them.
Mhm.
And pleasantly surprised. Very, very polished. It's a young gentleman that started his business about the same time I started mine. So I use him on kind of the off weeks or to cover people's vacations, things like that. Otherwise, we do most of our removals in-house. I have a husband and wife team that do a lot of the house calls for me.
Mhm.
And then as far as a crematory, yes, we use a third-party crematory. In the state of Michigan, as a funeral home owner, I can't own a crematory.
Got it.
At least directly. So I know a lot of other cremation companies like myself have gotten around that by buying a crematory and putting it in their spouse's name or their family, which is legal. I haven't gone down that road yet because it's a whole nother can of beans, right? Running the crematory. So I kind of leave that to the professionals at this point. So more or less, those kind of things, I guess, are outsourced. I have a company that does a lot of my Google marketing now, as far as like SEO marketing and stuff.
Yep.
All things I couldn't afford in the early days, but now, I've learned that there's people that are a lot smarter than me out there, and if you can employ them to make you look good, go for it. So. I guess I could put you in that boat too, as far as your company and Parting Pro. So it makes us look very polished and professional, which we appreciate.
As the owner or manager now, do you still see a lot of families? Are you still?
I'm probably 10% maybe now.
Okay.
Yeah, I often will see them,
Mm-hmm.
and it may just be kind of a high. I'm not really working with families directly too much anymore.
Yeah.
I would say probably 1 in 10 are my families that I work with, but I've grown to a point now where I have other staff that will typically work with all the families now. So I can work on marketing and some of those other things.
Yeah. I mean, hats off to you. I think that's the biggest blocker for a lot of companies that we see or that we work with, is the owner can do a really good job of seeing families, creating a really good experience. And then the moment that the owner is not involved or not willing to give up that piece of it, it kind of stunts the growth, because then there's someone else not working on, like you said, the marketing or managing other stuff, looking for growth opportunities, right? They're stuck creating that experience. And so I'm always impressed by people who can maintain, anyone could grow, but like to maintain that experience and the referrals and the 5-star ratings, even as you grow larger, I always feel is super impressive.
Yeah, I think it's a point where, you can do it the correct way, but to put that trust out there that, okay, you're going to step back and have other people that you expect to be you, right? Nobody's ever going to be yourself, but to take that leap of faith and saying they're going to treat families as well or better than you are, or they're going to make a removal, or they're going to make a phone call, and they're not going to make a mistake. They're going to treat the family the way they want to be treated. It takes a little bit of faith when you first start to do that, but you have to as you grow. There was times where I was getting up every night and just doing everything. And I'm like, no, you got to take a step back and say, hey, it's time to kind of, as the company grows, hire these people to help you. And we continue to do that today, and hopefully will in the future as well. So
you mentioned that you're very impressed and, feel very fortunate to have the staff that you do.
Yes.
Some of the, I would say, chatter amongst owners is that it's hard to hire, find, and maintain employees now. Is there anything, would you say, special or different that allows you to retain and attract talent in your funeral home?
Some of the people, almost all my staff has been referred to me by other people. Mm-hmm. So we're still a small company, it's not like I've hired dozens of people here, but I guess I've been fortunate. But yes, I know it's hard to find good people today, especially in this industry, to find somebody that wants to work sometimes the weird hours, just the nature of our business, with death and grieving. There's so many things stacked against even finding one person, right, to interview for a position. I've been lucky that I've had the right people sent to me or referred to me that have experience in the industry already. I don't know if I'm always going to have that, but right now, luckily I have. But I know that it's going to come to a point where it's going to be harder and harder probably to find people that, A, you trust, that will work hard and treat families right. So, yeah, it's... I know it's coming, and I know it's hard to find people today.
Yeah, you've done a good job though, and I think that it shows in the family. I obviously don't know. I'm not sitting there working with your staff, but I always look at it as, the ratio of numbers that you do compared to like what your reviews say, and it's hard to hide hundreds of reviews all saying kind of the same thing or feeling the same way, right? So,
right.
Yeah, either way, I feel like you must be doing something right in that regard. So what would you say, as a affordable cremation company, I think some of the fear, some of the talk is that a cremation, an online one especially, can create more of a commoditization of the cremation, right? The direct cremation space. I would say that to a certain point, maybe there is some truth to that, but I will say that there's a big difference between the successful online cremation companies and then the ones that don't get off the ground, right? You can definitely feel the difference right away. How differentiated do you feel like the experience needs to be, and how much do you need to set yourself apart versus just doing a really good job in this kind of space? Like, what do you think is most important?
Yeah, because it's becoming more crowded every year, right? There's still a lot of funeral directors that don't want anything to do. They think we're the lowest of the low, right? They're cremation families. I guess we've taken the outlook, or I have, right from day one, is a direct cremation family that doesn't order jewelry, doesn't do anything but just the bare minimum, to me is just as important as somebody that walks through my door and says, I want a $10,000 funeral. Can you do that? They're just as important. And if you treat them that way, and you don't treat them as kind of second rate because they want cremation, you're going to excel. Now, as far as funeral service goes, I think this is the future of funeral service. I think it's going to come to a point where there's going to be many providers like myself in just a couple traditional carriage houses that will provide those traditional funerals. People like belong to a Catholic church or something like that. You're always going to have those people that want funerals. But I think it's going to become more of a specialized, and you're going to see more companies like myself out there. Yeah. And it's going to get harder and harder, I think, to be different than the guy next door. And one way you can do that is, to me, technology. I've embraced learning different things or trying different things. And I find that, most of the people that I make arrangements with are 60 years of age and younger. So they know the internet, they have email, They know the basics. They shop through Amazon. They know how to shop online. They know how to build a package, whatever they're buying. And so I don't think it's any different for funeral service other than having that touch point we talked about. But I think it's embracing that technology, and because there's a lot of companies, like you said, that start out, hey, we're $1,000 for cremation, but they're still faxing forms to people to fill out. You got to go to your bank and fax it back, right? Or
Yeah.
It just doesn't work in today's. People are very instant. They want information quick. They want to get it done quick, and they want it to be easy. Nobody has a printer at home either. I've learned that. So if you can do everything be like a DocuSign type of program, man, that's where it's at. And I'm excited to see that technology continue to get better and better, and just some of the things that we can do. It's embracing that. And second is I'm banking on the fact that my competition doesn't want to work as hard as I do. So those things continue to have me grow as a company. But I think technology is where it's at, honestly.
Got it. So you kind of alluded to this a few minutes ago, where you said you think that, the traditional funeral homes, or the ones that put on traditional funerals, are going to become probably smaller, more boutique, while there's going to be a few major players, kind of like yourself, that do more of the, direct cremation or the simple cremation type stuff.
Right.
Do you feel, though, as you grow, do you think you would continue to double down on the direct cremation space and simplifying that as much as possible to make it, as much as the family wants, but simplifying that and perfecting that? Or do you think that will lead you to an opportunity to maybe figuring out ways to serve those families in more, let's say, robust ways, right? Like, you're getting that call because of your reputation, because of all the families you've served in the past, right? You're going to get that word of mouth. But based on the guests that we've talked to, there's kind of two trains of thoughts. Like, one is, we're going to be direct cremation or simple cremation or whatever. We're going to go hard on that path, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the others that, well, it's like, okay, after we've kind of gone down that path, we can figure out ways to, maybe adding a little bit of a ceremony, maybe adding a little bit of this, maybe taking a little bit more control over, what's going to happen after we return their loved one to them, right? So, in your mind, like, where do you see your business growing? I don't have an opinion. I don't know which one's the right one. I'm just, curious.
I think about that a lot. I'm like, what if all of a sudden everybody's cremated, and it's the bar just goes down here and everybody just vies for the lowest price, right? And I think in some markets that is happening, especially in the markets where a funeral home can own a crematory, because everything's kind of equalized at that point. I know eventually that's going to happen in Michigan. I'll be honest, I don't really have a game plan for that. However, up to this point, I've kind of built my business as direct cremation only. My favorite airline is Southwest Airlines. They fly the same aircraft. Mm-hmm. Everything's the same. It's no frills, right?
Yeah.
But they provide exceptional customer service compared to other airlines. So that's kind of been my mantra, I suppose, is we keep it simple. There are options for families as far as jewelry and urns and services. But we've kept it simple and just kind of had one business model or one target product that we sell, which is direct cremation. But I think you're right. I think we're going to have to, I can only ride on that for so long. I think eventually, we're going to have to figure out how to personalize things a little more, or provide more services that what families want. I don't know what that looks like right now, but I think you're right. I think at some point it's not going to just work as just a direct cremation provider. There's got to be something else involved. And maybe that's some type of variation between my business model and a traditional, where you like a semi-limited funeral home where you have certain products and services, but not everything. But that's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be at least where my head is at, like, I don't know if consumers are ready. I feel like now consumers come in with, a lot of them come in as one or the other type of family, right? They're either going to go traditional or they're going to be that, and you're not going to, let's say, convert a ton of direct cremation families into these huge funerals. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I don't think that, I would say the market's ready, but I do think that over the years, death care providers have gotten a bad rap, and because of that, I think there's a bunch of families that come in just saying, I don't want to spend any money, I don't want to do this, do the coffee can thing, stuff like that. And but I do think that as more and more providers and more information gets out there and people understand what's happening, they're going to trust more of the funeral director again, and they're going to understand they're not out to just get me.
Right. There's a lot of distrust out there.
And in building that trust, you may be able to, not convert, but show them what other options they have and provide that. So, I personally don't think it would be hard to do that now, but as the time comes, I think
I don't think we're quite there yet. Yeah. I think some of our biggest competition is not even in the funeral industry. Mm-hmm. Amazon, right, selling urns, or all these online urn companies. Hotels, event centers that are offering, hey, we can do weddings. Why not do funerals and celebrations of life? And so we miss out on that at our facilities. Not just me, but especially traditional funeral homes. Yeah, I'm sure there's others too, but that are not in our industry, but yet have learned, hey, there's money to pull from the funeral industry that we can sell products and services to, and add it to our weddings and baby showers and things like that. It's just another thing that we can provide to families. And I think we're somewhere on the spectrum right now of direct provider like myself, direct cremation, to traditional funeral home. You have these people in the middle that say, I really don't want the traditional dreary, sad funeral home, but I don't want just a direct cremation either. I do want something. And whether that's just a barbecue at home or something at their church without the funeral home involved, I think there's a good percentage that are spending some money, going to a hotel or going to an event center and having catered meals and things like that. And I know funeral homes are trying to capture that, but I think a lot of these people don't want to be in a funeral home. They want that. I agree. They don't want it to happen at the funeral home. So I agree. Yeah.
I guess my question for you, and obviously this is like an internal industry conversation because this would be something, but do you think that creates opportunity for the funeral home? I mean, you're already managing that relationship and helping them through the process of the actual, let's say, cremation and the preparation of the body and all of that stuff, right? So do you feel like that creates an opportunity for you to kind of get involved in helping arrange and maybe having a event type planner on staff to be like, I understand we don't even have a funeral home for you to do this as, but if you want, we have these vendors, we have, relationships with the hotels in the area to put on a lunch or whatever. And, we can help manage that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where it's going to go, is you're going to have some key vendors out there that you're either going to work with. So you're going to have, like you said, the event planner, the hotel manager, corporate salesperson that, plans everything in their conference centers, urn providers, anything you can think of that's in our industry. I think you're going to have kind of your go-to people that you're going to work with. I look at my facility here. I'm not big enough to have, I'm a very small building. My chapel sits about 50 people, so if it's larger than that, I can't handle it. And now I built my business to be that way, just a simple direct cremation. I've toyed with the idea of buying an event center, and being that other vendor myself, doing weddings and baby showers and birthday parties, but having an event center where I could have celebrations of life and stuff like that I would channel business through. I've thought about it. I just haven't done it. But I would imagine there's a lot of funeral homes that are trying that out, because I guess I have to believe that a lot of people want to have that celebration of some sort, but just don't want to have it in the funeral home that, hasn't updated since the 1970s. Yeah. They don't want to have in that dreary smelly old funeral home. They want to have it in a very, like a barn or a very light, airy facility that's very happy, right?
Mhm.
And I don't think funeral homes have quite caught on to that yet, personally. I think they try, a lot of them, and I think some are better than others. But I just think it hasn't quite caught up with what families want
Mhm.
and what they see a celebration of life being. Um,
I see.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the general idea of what a funeral is still pretty very clear in people's minds. If you see it on TV or in a movie, right?
right.
There's a very stereotypical view of what that looks like. So we just kind of finished the first half of the year. Do you have any big plans or changes coming up for your business, or are you just going to keep head down, working on what you're doing?
Yeah, nothing big in the works for us,
Hmm.
as of right now. Probably some hiring, to be honest with you.
Ooh, okay.
Probably more office staff, at least one more person. Summers tend to be the quiet time for funeral service, but we're finding we're growing, and it's not quiet in the summer either. So we need that
Yeah.
help to take care of families, especially when we do get busy in the fall. So I think for us, as we're kind of on, we're in growth mode still.
Yeah.
It's having that staff in place, that infrastructure in place to handle those calls.
What does your breakdown of your staff look like? Because I know as a lot of the cremation companies get bigger, a lot more specialization starts to happen. Right, you only have one person doing this, one person doing that.
Yeah.
Have you kind of moved into that role, or is it kind of like one funeral director takes a case and kind of
We're
completes
starting
all?
to. Yeah.
You're starting to.
So my wife works here.
Hmm.
Primarily what she does is, chase doctors to get death certificates signed. That's a full-time job, especially
Yeah.
at, 800 calls or whatever. Some of them sign in a timely manner, but most of them do not today. So you're chasing them, you're ordering death certificates. So she really doesn't see families. She kind of has a back office. She'll catch the phone if she knows that it's on the third or fourth ring or something. But that's pretty much what she's doing. I have another gal that pretty much just meets with families. That's all she does. And most of what we do is over the phone and internet, but that's full time. And then I've kind of stepped back into more of the owner's duties, paying bills, making sure we have supplies, all that grows exponentially as well, those duties. So, yes, you're right. We are starting to see more, okay, this is what you're going to do. This is what
Mhm.
you're going to do. The husband and wife that I have that do the removals, that's their full-time job.
Yeah.
So yes, yeah. In the beginning, it was like, let's all learn everything so we can just kind of interchange each other. But now you're right. It's you. This is your job. You do it well, and they're all very important jobs, and they come together as a whole.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think we're going to have more and more of that too as we continue to grow.
Yeah, I mean, as I've talked to others that have kind of grown to these 2, 3, 4,000 per calls, like they're 100% specialized. Right? Every person
I think
has
you
like
have to be.
one simple task, and they just do that all day, and then the
Yeah.
next person does the next piece of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I asked this question to everybody, and I know you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, what do you think death care looks like in 10 years?
I think in 10 years, you're going to see, and we're seeing a lot of this in our area, a lot of consolidation. The little guys are either closing their small chapels up or they're selling out to a local, competitor that has 10 locations in the state or something. I think you're just going to continue to see consolidation. Whereas, if you have 10 rooftops in this county, you can share one or two hearses, kind of how SCI built their clusters back in the
Yeah.
80s and 90s. I think it's survival mode for funeral homes. I think the days of owning one funeral home, traditional funeral home, and making a living, unless you're in the right area, I don't think those exist anymore, especially with the cremation rate being so high. I think the future of funeral service, or where it's going to be in 10 years, is like what I said earlier, less traditional firms and more direct cremation firms or direct disposition. I'm also hoping that some more acceptable forms of disposition become legal in our state,
Mhm.
like alkaline hydrolysis,
Are neither of those
not legal in
legalized yet?
Michigan. Um,
NOR.
you can do like an earth burial or a green burial, but no cemeteries will do it. They make you buy a vault, so that
Oh.
that hasn't really caught on.
Well, even in I'm in the LA area, Los Angeles, and
Okay.
even here you have to drive out an hour or two just to get to a green burial.
Yeah, I don't even know. I don't know of any in my area.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
I just think, yeah, more consolidation, more probably you're going to see some firms that specialize in different things, So
Yeah.
if different forms of disposition become legal, you're probably going to have, hey, this is what we do here. This is what we do here. And I could see that maybe growing some different niche markets that don't even exist right now in our state that will maybe in a couple years. So
What are your thoughts on, I don't have a horse in this race, right? In terms of dispositions, I guess.
mhm.
So it's always interesting for me because I know there's a lot of chatter about alkaline hydrolysis. I know, the NOR crowd has gotten a lot of noise as well. But when you look at the actual numbers in these states, the numbers of these things are not that significant yet.
Yeah.
Whether that's because it's cost prohibitive, because it is cost prohibitive for a lot of them, whether that's, people just aren't into it, consumers in general, or I don't know. I know that to start anything, it's going to be slow,
Mhm.
but I wonder because it's been a year or two for some of these states and some of these businesses, and
Yeah.
you don't see it growing as quickly as maybe you would think. So, do you think that these types of dispositions will start to catch on? And what do you think it would take for them to actually
Like
start
years
to grow?
ago, places like California and Florida is kind of where cremation started, right at the coastline,
Yeah.
and it's moved inward. You know, in a place like Michigan, our cremation rate is probably where you guys were 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. Um, so I think some of these different forms of disposition we're going to see happening in other places. Probably something a little more progressive like California. A lot of people, different nationalities that are going to say, hey, this is acceptable. We can do human composting or whatever it is. But I don't think you're going to see Michigan all of a sudden be oh my gosh, everybody in Michigan's doing this. I think it's going to be in states like yours and Florida, New York, things like that. And it'll trickle into the middle of the country eventually. What that is, which form of disposition, I don't know. There's lots of new ones kind of starting to pop up. So it'll be interesting. I think that's something to watch over the next 5-10 years, see how that evolves. I still think traditional cremation with flame is going to be the winner even 10 years from now. But we'll
Yeah,
see.
I mean,
I don't know.
we had Barbara on last episode,
Yeah.
and she kind of went over the statistics, and they've been fairly accurate over the years. And it looks like we're going to get up to about 75 or 80% in the next 10 years or so
As a country.
as a country, because
Yeah.
we usually lag behind Canada a decade or so,
Okay.
and they're there, and so seems like we're going to be headed in that direction. So sounds like you're in the right spot at least.
Yeah, I mean, at least hopefully, well, I'm still in my working years, Yeah, I don't know, I don't think cremation is going anywhere. I
Mhm.
think you're going to see more personalization,
Yeah.
less traditional funeral homes, and more kind of hybrid type of things like the event planners and things like that. And I think you're going to see probably in the next couple of years some new players come in our industry,
Hmm.
that maybe don't even exist today. And I once again I can't tell you what that is, but I think it's going to be a new concept, a new way to personalize or remember your loved ones. That's going to say, hey, this is a new option or something like that. So, yeah, I think it's an exciting time to be in funeral service. Just it's not one size fits all anymore. It's things are changing, but nobody really knows what the finish line is. At this
Yeah,
point.
not yet. And
No.
I will say it. This is probably the quickest it's changed. Deathcare has changed in such a short amount of time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
In the last, I don't know,
decade
20
or so.
or a long time, actually. I don't even know. So you're right about that. There's change coming. I think that means opportunity as well. And, it's going to be exciting time.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
All right. Well, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about today? Is there anything else that, any other crazy secrets of, your business?
I got to keep those secret though.
Okay. I always laugh because, when you end up talking to people who have businesses and built big businesses, a lot of times they're very open about what they do and how they do it. And, given to your point, even it's, I'm going to outwork my competition anyway, so they can have my blueprint, but I'm going to do it better and I'm going to work harder anyway. So
I mean,
that's usually what ends up happening.
Yeah. And I think, in this industry, I think there's a lot of, I call them old timers, right? Some of that old generation that's still around. This is how my dad did it. This is how my grandpa did it. My great grandpa did it. Well, that's great, but I don't think society wants to do it that way anymore. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens, with those people.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, those are definitely phasing out. But I mean, there's plenty of newer, people like yourself who,
in younger generation, come on board and bring me those ideas. Because that's who we're going to serve next, right? Eventually they're going to move into, about where I am in life, where I'll have to take care of my parents at some point, and so that's not that far away, So I think my generation down is really going to shape funeral service here in the next couple of years. And I think you're part of that, bringing some of that technology into the marketplace that didn't exist just 5-7 years ago, Now I look at it and how did I operate without it? So, but you have to embrace it first. And if you don't, you can't keep doing things the way they've always been done. And that's kind of the worst statement ever to come out of your mouth. This is the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
So embrace technology.
Yeah. Yeah. We went through a long journey of people not adapting or not wanting to adapt. So
I'm sure there's still lots.
I get you. COVID changed a lot of that, but yeah, I understand. Yeah.
No,
Cool.
I'm all for trying new things, as long as it's legal, ethical. Hey, let's try it. Let's see if this will help the way we take care of our families and make that whole experience better and easier for them.
Yep.
And I'll sign up for it every day.
Awesome. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time, Troy. It was very insightful. Congrats on all the success you've had in such a short amount of time. And, in talking to you, I really don't see it slowing down any time for you. You've kind of checked all the boxes of what I see on all the other successful people that I've had on here. It's just about execution, hard work, and making sure that you care about the family.
And enjoying what you do.
Yeah.
If you can't have fun and enjoy it, find something else to do, right? So,
Yep.
So.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Troy, for the Direct Cremation podcast. I'm Tyler Yamasaki. Thanks. And we'll catch you guys next time. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you ever want to know more, please find us at directcremation.com.